As the Obama administration was keeping a close eye on the revolution in Egypt, the American Conservative Union held its annual CPAC conference. Potential Republican presidential contenders were critical of the president's foreign policy. One of them, Newt Gingrich, a man who led a revolution of his own in 1994 when Republicans took control of Congress, joins us now. He is a Fox News contributor and co-author, along with his wife Callista, of a new book on Ronald Reagan called Rendezvous with Destiny. Thank you for being with us.
Good to be with you.
First of all, you did criticize President Obama's handling of this crisis in Egypt, and you called it timid, confused, and amazingly amateurish.
Well, let me just give you one example. When you appoint a very senior diplomat to be your special ambassador, he makes a statement in Munich about what we're doing, and 3 hours later the White House is directly contradicting him.
What would you have done? What would you have done specifically in the big picture questions of you have an ally for 30 years and then you have people power on the streets?
Look, I had lunch with George Shultz, who was Ronald Reagan's Secretary of State, at the Reagan Library for the 100th birthday last Sunday. Secretary Shultz said, when you have a situation like this where you've had an ally for 30 years, you stay relatively quiet publicly and you say to him privately, the time has come for you to leave. We are prepared to do what it takes to get you to leave. We'll find a way for you to leave with safety for you and your family. But this is over. But he said you do it quietly because every other potential ally in the world is watching you. And if they see you publicly abandon somebody who's been with you for 30 years, they wonder, why should I trust the United States? But Shultz was quite clear, just as we had in Poland and in Czechoslovakia and in Hungary, we were, the Reagan administration was adamantly in favor of freedom. And I think that he said and I think you have to start with the fact that it's the courage of the Egyptian people that made this possible, and we should be reinforcing and strengthening that courage.
Let me roll some tape of you with President Mubarak when you were House Speaker in 1994, and just look at what you said there.
Let me just say that we're very, very glad to have President Mubarak here. He is a very, very important ally, friend, and advisor, and many things that we've done, including Desert Shield, would not have been possible without the help of Egypt.
So again, very close ally, and yet you're also full-throated in the defense of democracy.
It's the challenge that George W. Bush made in his second inaugural address, which is very complicated. He's saying, on the one hand, we are for democracy everywhere, and I think we have to be. That's the American mission in the world. It's why American exceptionalism is ultimately human exceptionalism. Because everybody on the planet's endowed by their creator, including, by the way, Chinese, Russian, Iranian, Saudi. I mean, there are a lot of Venezuelan, Cuban. I mean, there are a lot of places.
So the President Obama standing clearly for the protesters by the
end
of is the right thing to do.
But remember, this is an administration which, for reasons I don't understand, actually cut out the democracy in Egypt funds inside the State Department.
Okay, well, as you know,
but I don't think our focus shouldn't be on Obama. Our focus ought to be, what can America do now to make sure the military doesn't impose a new dictatorship for another 30 or 40 years? And how do we, on the other hand, make sure that you don't end up with a Muslim Brotherhood staging a coup at some point over a 3 or 4 or 5 year period?
Okay, so let me ask you, what does the U.S. do now to make sure that the military, which has put out no timeline, neither for lifting the emergency nor a roadmap for democracy, what does the United States, with such close relationships militarily, do right now?
I think we have to quietly, we have a lot, one of the great virtues of our military training program is we have a lot of senior officers who were in school with a lot of Egyptian officers. I think they need to be collectively calling their friends and saying, look, you don't want to own the country, because then you own every problem and you can't solve them. What you want to do, you don't want to become Burma. I mean, what you want to do is figure out a way to have a transition to a stable civilian government, recognize that over a fairly long period of time the military is going to have less role in the economy, because right now the military is a big part of the Egyptian economy.
And if they don't, do you use the very powerful lever of $1.5 billion a year to the military?
Of course
you pull it?
Yeah, you communicate. You may pull part of it. It may suddenly get a lot slower. You may not approve certain kind of activities. But we shouldn't kid ourselves. I mean, Egypt has been a staging area for us for a long time now. And Egypt has been vital to Israeli security. And so I think but I think we should be pressuring everywhere, and I want to repeat, including China, including Russia, including Cuba. We should be pushing steadily and saying, America stands for freedom.
Oh, you talked about the Muslim Brotherhood, and clearly many people are worried about the future. Now, they've made statements that they're not interested in the presidential position right now. You said, under no circumstances should the United States be willing to support a government in Egypt that lifts this ban against the Muslim Brotherhood. Well, already the Egyptian authorities have de facto, because they've been talking to them. So, under no circumstances, what does that mean?
I think we should try every way we can to ensure the two things the Muslim Brotherhood will ultimately want are the Interior Ministry and education.
But they haven't said that.
No, but I'm just saying, if you watch them with Hamas, if you watch them everywhere in the region, they understand that if they can get control of the schools, they're very patient. They have a 20 or 30-year strategy. This is not an overnight group.
So let me ask you, the logical denouement of democracy is that they may elect people who you don't like. You're not able to control democracy. So how do you thread that needle?
This is a huge challenge. It's not a question of liking or disliking. I mean, we have lots of governments.
No, but still, how do you try to control democracy?
Every society has to come to grips with the fact that there are some elements who would create a dictatorship. So you'd have one last vote. It wouldn't be a democracy, it'd be one last vote. And whether it is Lenin replacing Kerensky, whether it is Hitler taking over in Germany, whether it is the Ayatollah running Iran, you have to be very cautious about the idea that you can automatically accept a group if, in fact, you have pretty good reason to believe that their goal is a dictatorship. It's the tragedy of Zimbabwe, where you have a government which clearly is totally illegitimate.
Very quickly, one of the levers that America does have is democracy building, but that requires foreign aid.
Yes.
And that's often one of the first things that's cut. Do you think foreign aid in this regard should be bolstered?
Well, first of all, I think you ought to look at how much we're already spending and look at how
much do you think?
We spend, including aid for health and things, we spend something like 35 or 40 billion.
It's 1% of the U.S. budget. But my question is, if you really want democracy, would you favor increasing the aid to that?
And my answer is I'd first want to look at how we currently spend the aid. I don't think our bureaucracy giving money to their bureaucracy is democracy.
No, to NGOs that actually build democracy.
I would certainly look at rethinking the current foreign aid program and shifting a great deal more out of government bureaucracies into NGOs and, frankly, into investments. I think the tax credit for countries that are very poor, I supported the Africa Free Trade Bill for that reason.
And to get back to your future after CPAC, when will you make your decision? Are you going to run for president?
Well, Calista and I will probably make a decision by the end of this month about whether or not to set up an exploratory committee, and we're working our way through it.
So no decision right now to tell us?
Not this morning.
No?
No.
Thank you very much.
Glad to be here.